Good morning, everyone. Let's get started with today's class. So, in last class, we started off with mixers and we saw where mixers are being used, and we started looking at some of the fundamental parameters of mixers. Right? And in specific, we looked at the mixing operation, how it is, what is it mathematically. We also saw how it is realized, at least at a system level, and we all also looked at the concept of conversion gain, right? And we said that it is not like the usual notion of gain where the input and the output are at the same frequency. You just look at the voltage ratios, but here the input and the outputs are at different, totally different frequency ranges, right? So let's continue with our study of the different performance metrics of a mixer, and before we get into the circuit implementation of mixers. Okay. Now we looked at the notion of conversion gain, and for the previous example where we had the uh, in the example, if we had A cos omega RF t, let's say VRF of t was this, and VLO of t was given by B cos omega LO of t. Now the VIF of t was given by AB by 2 cos omega RF difference omega LO of t, right? And the conversion gain was given by B by 2. Now, this was just a mathematical example, okay? In practice, based on the way in which you implement these mixers, there are two types of implementations, okay? So one is called as passive mixers, and the other is called as active mixers, okay? So in passive, the difference between the two is that in passive mixers, you do not have any amplification which is happening, okay? You can have a notional voltage or current gain, okay, gain or loss, okay? Usually it is less than 1, usually it is lossy, okay? Um, Usually these things are lossy. You don't have proper gain. Whereas in active mixers, you can have a gain which is greater than 1. Okay. We will look at it subsequently. Okay. Now, what are the two major parameters for any RF system is basically noise and linearity. Correct. Now, what can we say about the requirements on a mixer in terms of noise and in terms of linearity? Now, mixer definitely comes as the second stage. Of course, there are some architectures in literature which are called as mixer first architectures for receivers. We'll not go into it now, but typically what happens is, okay, the noise figure of mixers is usually quite bad. Okay, it's usually around 8 to 12 dB. The noise figure of mixers is usually quite bad. All right, and if you look at so what happens is, of course, the only saving thing is that the noise figure of the mixer is uh, you know it's kind of divided by the available power gain of your LNA, right? So if this is your LNA's gain, you also have the NF of mixer minus 1 divided by the available power gain of the LNA. All right. So this is the one which is kind of going to save the day. All right. And the other thing is, of course, you have linearity issues, right? So noise figure of mixers, you really can't get anything beyond, like 6 dB. Like 6 itself is too good. Like typically around 8, 10, 12 dB of noise figure is what you would get for a mixer. Okay. And uh, of course, here again the other concept is with regard to linearity. Now, what can we say about linearity? So if you look at a chain, a receiver chain, for example, now there is a small signal. This LNA has some gain, and therefore the signal is already increased, right? So the signal amplitude at the input of your mixer is much higher than what the LNA is saying, because the LNA itself has got gain. And looking at the noise performance, you would basically try to increase the gain of the LNA. Let's say if you are working on a product and you want to, have a good noise figure for your entire receiver, what you would do is, you know that the noise figure of your mixer is bad, and so to compensate for it, you will make sure that your LNA noise figure is good, and the gain of the LNA is also as high as you can get, right? So to increase the gain of the LNA. Correct. Now, if you, on the flip side, so this is as far as noise is concerned, right? When you go to linearity, if you have a higher gain, right, the input signal at the mixer itself is going to have higher amplitude. And because of this higher amplitude, your linearity of the mixer becomes very critical. Okay. Now, if you recall the expression that we derived, right, the IIP3 point, the cascaded IIP3 point, right, can be written as A IIP3, let's say this is for the LNA, plus the gain squared, alpha LNA squared divided by AIP3 mixer squared, right. Let's say this is for the total, right. So what we are seeing here is the IIP3 of the IP3 point of the mixer is reduced by the gain, voltage gain of the LNA. Okay. So if the, what we are saying here is, if the mixer by itself in isolation has a certain IIP3, right? When you put it together in a receiver system with an LNA preceding it, the cascaded IP3, in the cascaded IIP3 expression, the IIP3 is scaled down by a factor of the gain of the LNA. Okay, so you can see that noise and linearity are kind of having opposite requirements, right? In order to have a very good noise figure, you want the gain of the LNA to be high, and if you want the linearity of the entire system to be really good, you want the gain of the LNA to be low. Okay, so the final conclusion is, you want to have high linearity for mixers is required. Okay, so this is both understood from the expressions, as well as intuitively you can look at the diagram, look at the system and say, hey, I mean, if a certain amount of signal is going to be at the input of my LNA, the amount of signal at the input of the mixer is going to be scaled up by the factor of the gain of the LNA, and therefore my mixer should be able to handle higher swing signals. So the mixer should be much more linear. The linearity of the mixer should be higher. Okay. Now, what about the transmit side? So if you look at the transmit side, right, you have the mixer. Let's say this is your IF signal or your baseband signal. You have your LO, then you have your RF going into your, let's say, pre-driver and PA. Okay. Now, what is critical here, right? Linearity, of course, comparatively here, you can say that, compared to the swing of the, compared to the linearity of the power amplifier, I mean, the mixer will see, I mean, the swing at the mixer would be typically lower than what you would get at the power amplifier. So probably, so that also, I mean, it all depends from system to system. You can never make a blanket statement, right? So many times what you would do is, you will see fairly good swing even here, right? So linearity is important, because if you have non-linearity here, that non-linearity will get amplified by the power amplifier also. Okay. So, but linearity is critical, okay, especially if baseband or IF swing is high. Okay. Now, why would this swing be high? There is what is called as the receive band noise concept. So let me explain this. Okay, just pay attention. So what happens is, let's say this is the spectrum. Okay, let's say this is 900 megahertz where you are transmitting. Okay, so the transmitter is going to have, let's say, really high power. This is your transmitter. Ideally, what will happen? You transmit, ideally, your spectrum is going to look like this, in the sense that you have signal in this bandwidth, right, and zero elsewhere. Correct? That is your ideal case. Now, in the real case, what will happen is, of course, when we talk about power amplifiers next, we will deal with all those things in greater detail. But what will happen is, of course, there will be some kind of a skirt around it, okay, and it will not power at far out frequencies will not completely go down to zero. It will come down to some noise level, okay. It will not become completely zero. Okay, there will be a certain finite amount of power. Now, where is this coming from? Right? So, this is basically coming from noise. So, you have noise, and the noise gets, fairly well amplified because you have mixer gain, and then you have the pre-power amplifier gain, or the driver stage, let's call it DA, driver amplifier, and then you have the power amplifier. So, all of them will have fairly good amount of gain, and so the noise gets amplified, and the noise floor of the entire system is now increased. Okay. Now, let us assume, okay, for example, let me say this is 900 and let's say 20 megahertz. Okay. Let's say there is one band here which is actually a receive band. Okay. Let's say this is a TX band, this is an RX band. Okay. What is a TX RX band? Basically, I mean, many of the systems are time domain duplex. Some of the systems are TDD, time domain duplex, but some of the systems are FDD, especially in 4G communication, LTE, LTE advanced, and all that. You do have some bands where there is a frequency domain duplex systems. Okay, and so what happens is the receive band noise becomes critical. So that is to say, your transmitter and receiver are working at the same time, correct? And the noise which is there, I mean, the noise produced by the power amplifier somehow gets, uh, your PA and your LNA are working at the same time. Both are working at different frequencies. Okay, let's say your PA is working here and your LNA is working here. All right. But what happens is the noise that the PA is throwing at this 920 megahertz increases the noise floor of your, there is noise which is getting dumped on top of your receiver, right? I mean, there are other things like that TX to RX isolation and other things. We will look at it when we look at PAs and transmitter sites in more detailed thing. But here, what happens is this noise, okay, is what is called as receive band noise. Okay, and many times this becomes a parameter, or this becomes a specification which you need to meet. Okay, at a certain offset from your transmit frequency, the receive band noise should be suppressed by a certain amount. Okay, and that is quite important. So in that case, okay, mixer noise comes into the picture. You understood? For the actual transmit band, your signal to noise ratio is extremely good because you're generating the whole thing from your chip, right? Like you'll have a D2A converter, you have your modem has digital bits coming out, you have a D2A converter, right? And then you have low pass filter, some gain elements and so on. So the SNR here at the input of the mixer at the IF port is extremely good, okay? So in the TX band, you really don't care so much about noise, okay? But what is of concern is the noise in other bands, okay? Because you cannot have very sharp filters, the noise which is there in the other bands will affect the performance of your receiver, okay, which can potentially sit in one of these close by bands, okay. And in such a scenario, which is called as receive band noise, if you look at some literature, you know, the some of the papers would talk quite a bit about this RXB, and it's called as a receive band noise. How do you optimize it? How do you make sure it is less and so on? In that context, the mixer noise becomes critical, or it comes into the picture. Otherwise, you really don't care about the noise of the mixer. Okay. Now, and on the other side, of course, you have linearity, and sometimes you have very strict mask specifications. Okay, we will talk about it when we talk about PS. So there also the noise comes into the picture. Okay, otherwise linearity is the one which is quite critical. All right. Okay. Now, coming to some parameters. So how do you define noise figure? Okay, we talked about noise, we talked about linearity. Now, how do you define noise figure, right? So we all know how to define noise figures for LNAs or any amplifiers, correct? So we'll say what is the SNR at the output divided by the SNR at the input, right? So, sorry, the SNR at the input divided by the SNR at the output. So that's going to be your noise figure. Okay, but here how will you define? Okay, so for down conversion mixers, the noise figure is defined as the SNR at the input. What is the input here? At RF divided by the SNR at IF. Okay, so this is what is called this is how noise figure is defined. All right. Now, let me just, now this is LF, LO, RF, and let's say IF. Okay. Now, I hope all of you are familiar with the problem of image. What is image? In heterodyne receivers, what is the image problem? Have you come across this? Yeah, what is it?
Yes, sir. If there is a signal LO plus IF, then that loss is
Correct.
down
So
conversion.
let's say this is your omega LO, and let's say this is omega RF. So if these two mix, you will get a certain omega IF. But there is also a omega image, okay, which is sitting on the other side of the LO. Okay. If your desired band is omega LO plus omega IF, then the image band becomes omega LO minus omega IF. Okay, so if this is plus or minus, it becomes minus or plus omega IF, right? So this is the image problem. Now, once this folds down into the same IF frequency, there is no way by which you can get rid of it, right? So it has to be tackled before the mixing operation, which is why you usually have image reject filters, band pass filters, uh, before mixer, right? This happens in heterodyne receivers, right? Now, which is why, I mean, you'll usually see that in in a receiver you'll have a BPF, and then you'll have an LNA, because it's very difficult to have such very sharp cutoff filters on chip. So usually this will be an off chip bandpass filter, and then you have an LNA, and then you have a mixer, and then you have a filter, right, and so on. Okay. Now this problem is solved in direct conversion receivers. because there is no image, right? There is no concept of image, right? So when we talk about, in general heterodyne receivers, how will you define noise figure? There are two definitions of noise figure. So if you look at papers, there are two definitions. Okay, one is called as one scenario is here. Let me say case one. Okay, desired signal is present in only one sideband. Okay, that is either omega LO plus IF or omega LO minus IF. Okay, so that is called as a single sideband noise figure, which is defined as the SNR at the omega RF divided by SNR at IF. Okay, now there is also one more case where you say that the necessary information or the desired signal is present in both sidebands. Okay, so that is at omega RF and omega IM, the image frequency. So this is called as the double sideband or the DSB noise figure, and it is written as the SNR at omega RF plus the SNR at omega IM divided by the SNR at IF. Okay. And if you compare these two noise figures, the SSB noise figure and the DSB noise figure, okay, of course, now you might come back and say, who has, I mean, how will you have, information or desired signal in both, the image and the, the RF, both at both the frequencies, how will you have? So there are, I think, maybe one or two modulation schemes where you might have something like that. But typically what happens is, if you look at this, okay, let me give the scenario. Let's say you have signal and some noise, signal and some noise. Okay, let me make it both symmetric. Okay, so this is omega IM and this is omega RF. Okay, the SNR of this, okay, this is DSB. For the SSB, how is it going to be? Let's say this is 0. Let's say at omega IM, you only have some noise. Okay, this is noise. Whereas at omega RF, you have signal. Now, if you look at the SNR of this particular signal and compare it with the SNR of this particular signal, which will have more SNR? If you compare SNR at omega RF and SNR at omega RF plus omega IM, which will have better SNR? Obviously the DSB, right? So here, let's say if the signal is the same here, you have twice the signal power and of course 2 times the noise power. Okay, if you say this has a certain amount of signal power and noise power, here you have 2 times the signal power and 2 times the noise power. Here what do you have in the previous case? You have a 1 signal power and 2 equivalent noise powers. So obviously DSB noise figure is greater or is lesser than the SSB noise figure by usually around 3 dB. Okay, that is assuming that same signal is there in both. All right, because you have twice the signal here, right? And many times what happens is, in order to project a nice number in papers especially, you will see some papers reporting the DSB noise figure, which will obviously be 3 dB better than the SSB noise figure. So which is why many times papers will explicitly mention saying this is my SSB noise figure and this is my DSB noise figure. Okay, at least now the trend is not so much. Mostly people report only SSB noise figure, but earlier people wanted to project very nice noise figures, and they will go ahead and put the DSB noise figure. Okay, and there are people who do a more honest evaluation with an SSB noise figure, and they'll very specifically mention that this is my SSB noise figure. So usually the SSB single sideband noise figure is typically 10 to 15 dB. Okay, depending on the implementation. All right. So you have to be careful, especially when you look at reported noise figures of mixers, you have to know which noise figure is reported. Is it the DSB noise figure, or is it the SSB noise figure? Okay. All right. Now we have looked at the concept of linearity. Of course, IIP3 is pretty much the same. I mean, you look at the intermodulation components and things like that. Okay, so noise figure we have looked at. There is one more important parameter which is called as feed through. Right. Okay, before I kind of move into this, let me just add a note for linearity. So how do we do that? We talk about the 1 dB compression point, right? So how can you define the 1 dB compression point? We can say that the IF compresses as RF input power increases, right? So the axis now becomes P in RF, and it is, let's say, I mean, if you look at 20 log of V in RF and 20 log of V out IF. Okay, so you'll see that it is going to go straight and then starts curving. All right, so this is basically your 1 dB compression point. All right, and for the and vice versa for transmitters, because there the input is baseband or IF and the output is RF. Okay. Now, what about IP3? How do you define IP3? Right. So again, you talk about a two-tone test, right? So you have a mixer and you have, let's say, two tones, let's say F1 and F2, right? Now, because of the non-linearity, you will basically have a 2F1 minus F2 and 2F2 minus F1 tones, right? This is what we normally talk about, right? If you have an amplifier. But how will you talk about in terms of mixer? Now, these two terms will kind of mix down to IF band, okay? So, for example, let's say you have, let me just give a quick example. Let's say if this is 900 megahertz, and let's say this is 901 megahertz, okay? What is 2F1 minus F2? You'll have at 899 and you'll have at 902 megahertz, correct? Now, if you down convert the whole thing to, let's say, 10 megahertz, such that 900 megahertz comes to 10 megahertz, right? And this becomes, 11 megahertz, right? This will become 12 megahertz, and this will be 9 megahertz. Understood? Okay. So when we talk about IIP3, we look at these terms in the IF band. Okay. So it is about the down converted intermodulated terms versus input power. Okay. So that is how we define the IP3 of a mixer. Okay. All right. Any doubts? Any question? Is it clear? So it's not very straightforward like amplifiers. Here the nonlinearity happens and there is a frequency translation. So you look at the frequency translated IM3 components. All right. Okay. So now let us move to the other thing, which is basically feed through. Now, what is feed through? Let's say we have this mixer. Okay, let's, for example, now look at a down conversion mixer. You have RF, IF, and LF ports. Now, the mixer is implemented using transistors. Okay. Now, for example, let's say you are having a a very, very rudimentary mixer, which is going to look like this, okay, which is a switch, a MOSFET switch, and this is controlled by the LO signal, okay. Now what do you have? You have some gate to source capacitance, gate to drain capacitance, you have, drain to bulk capacitance, right? You have source to bulk capacitance, all these things are there, right? Let's say this is your bulk terminal, all right. Now, because we are talking about RF frequencies, there can be leakage between all these three ports. The RF can leak into LO, the LO can leak into RF, right? The RF can kind of leak into IF, right? And IF can kind of leak back into RF, and IF and LO can leak into each other. Okay, these are all the different scenarios that is possible. And as you can see from this very rudimentary and simple circuit that I drew, okay, you can see that it is very much possible because you have these tiny capacitors, CGS, CGD, CGB, CSB, CDB, all these capacitors, which will act as fairly low frequency, low impedance parts at higher frequencies. Okay. Now what happens in the RX? Okay, if there is a LO to RF leakage, let's say the LO is leaking into RF, what will happen? Now what will happen is, because of the leakage, right, at the input of the mixer, you'll have omega RF plus omega LO, okay, and this composite signal is going to get down converted. You understood? If there is LO to RF leakage, the one thing that can happen is, the signal goes like this and then back here. Okay, this is what is called as self-mixing. All right, this phenomenon is called as self-mixing, where the LO leaks into the RF port, and now the signal actually coming into the mixer is omega RF plus, you have omega RF tone and omega LO tone, not plus, sorry, okay. What I meant was both these tones are coming into the mixer. Now what will happen? At the IF port, you will have omega RF difference omega LO, which is your required IF, okay. Now when omega LO mixes with omega LO, what are the components that you will get? You will get a component at 2 times omega LO and DC, right? So the filter will take care of your 2 times omega LO. The low pass filter will get rid of this component. What you are left with is DC, okay. So in other words, self-mixing will produce what is called as DC offsets. That is, because of self-mixing, you will see that the DC levels are getting shifted. Now DC levels are very important in CMOS circuits because that is what is going to bias your next stage, right? So because of the self-mixing, if your DC starts getting shifted here and there, you're going to have a pretty bad problem, okay? So this is the problem of DC offset. So self-mixing, is one effect, and it gives rise to DC offsets, all right? There is also one more effect, which is like, if let's say this is your LO, this is your RF. Let's say your RF, it has an LNA, okay, and then it goes to your antenna, right? Now the reverse isolation of your LO, of your LNA, may not be so very good, okay. You guys are all doing the design of an LNA, right? So if you do the S parameter simulation, you will look at this parameter S12. What does S12 convey? It is the reverse isolation. Usually you will have around minus 30 kind of number, but let's say if the LO signal is really powerful, usually it is the case because LO will be a large signal swing. In the lower gigahertz range, it will usually be a square wave as well. So what can happen is, this LO can leak through this and get re-radiated through the antenna. That is also possible. So that is what is called as LO radiation. And this problem becomes more severe in what is called as mixer first architectures. Mixer first receivers. Okay. Now mixer first receivers, they are used in scenarios where the input power is high and noise figure can be compromised. Okay. So in such scenarios, okay, they have what is called as mixer first architecture, where you get rid of the LNA, right? You have only the mixer as your first stage. Okay, that is what is called as a mixer first receiver. So that has been published quite widely in the literature as well. And in these cases, it is a severe problem. Okay, that is the LO can radiate through the antenna. So that is called as LO radiation. Okay. Now this is the problem if your LO is leaking into your RF port. Okay. Now what happens if your RF leaks to your LO? Okay. That is, you have your mixer, you have your RF port. Now when will this happen? This leakage will become prominent when you have in the presence of large in-band interferers. That is, along with your desired signal, there is a very large interferer, like how we talked about blocking, no? Like you have a very large blocking signal or an interfering signal. Now, if the input amplitude, if the input signal at your RF port is very large, it can leak to your LO. And this leaking, what will happen? Okay, so this will give rise to what is called as an injection pulling, or let me just call it as LO pulling. This phenomenon is called as LO pulling. I will talk about this when we talk about oscillators. So let me just leave it here, because if I start to explain, I have to go through something. But so what you can say is it will pull the LO. For example, if your oscillator is oscillating at, let's say, 900, and this is especially a problem in direct conversion receivers. Okay, so let's say 900, okay, I'm bored of the 900 number. Let's say our input signal is 1.4 gigahertz. Okay, and your LO, let's say this is your omega RF, which is an interferer. Let me say my LO is supposed to be at 1.395 gigahertz. Okay, very close by. All right, your desired signal is at 1.395, and the interferer, let me say, instead of writing RF, let me say the interferer is at 1.4 gigahertz, and my desired signal is at 1.395 gigahertz. Okay, now what will happen is this will pull the oscillator to 1.4 gigahertz. Okay, this is what is called as LO pulling, and that happens through a phenomenon called as injection locking. Okay, so this is a problem. Okay, especially in direct conversion receivers, and in the industry, when people design these receivers, they'll make sure that you are keeping these frequencies fairly apart. Okay. Now, what happens if your RF leaks to IF? What happens if RF leaks to IF? Due to the second order distortion, it can form some beat components. Okay. Due to second order distortion, what can happen is, the RF and this one can form a beat component, and basically you will have IP2, which is basically, the RF and IF will kind of interfere, mix together, and you'll have those kinds of issues. Okay, so of course, if the yellow leaks over to IF, it can directly be taken care of because of the filter, and IF to yellow also will not have much. But these are the main problems. Okay, especially this LO to RF self mixing and RF to LO oscillator pulling. These are the main issues. So this is what is called as feed through. Okay, and these feed throughs are going to we will see how the feed through is going to be for different mixer architectures. Okay. So now what we will do is, let's look at, first we will start looking at what is called as passive mixers. Okay. Now as the name suggests, passive mixers, as I explained, you will not have gain. Okay. And in each of these categories, you have what is called a single balanced mixer and double balanced mixer. Now, what is this very fancy term? It's very simple. In single balanced mixer, okay, the LO is differential and RF is single ended. Okay. In the double balanced mixer, LO is differential and RF is also differential. Okay, that's the difference. All right. Anyway, IF obviously will be differential because the output, once you have LO as differential, obviously the IF will also be differential. Okay, so that is why you get the name single balanced and double balanced. Single balanced means only one is balanced. Balanced is another name for differential. It comes from the audio world. Okay, so this is, we will look at both these architectures. Okay, now let us look at a very simple single balanced architecture. Okay, single balanced passive mixer. As I mentioned, a very simple implementation would be to use switches. Right. So if you can use switches, you can basically mix. So a single balanced passive mixer looks something like this. You have RF coming in and you have two parts. Okay, so this is controlled by LO and this is controlled by LO bar, and you have the load resistance or load impedance. Okay, so this will be IF plus and IF minus. All right. Okay, now how is this going to provide mixing action? Basically we have already seen, right? So it is a switch basically. So you can think of it, right? You can think of it as the VRF of T multiplied by this square wave function, okay, where this is basically 1 by FLO. Right. Now, if let's say this has a spectrum of something like this centered around omega RF, what will be the spectrum of this square wave signal at LO? What will be the spectrum of this signal?
FLO and its harmonics.
Yeah, FLO and its harmonics, right? So you will have FLO and 2FLO. So if you have 50% duty cycle clock, you will not have the even order harmonic, okay? So if you have 50% duty cycle, no even harmonics, okay? And you will have minus 3F, the amplitude is negative, you'll have 3FLO, then you'll have 5FLO, and so on. Okay. Now, what happens basically is that this switching action is going to mix whatever is there. So what will happen is whatever is around here will get mixed down to omega IF, right? And whatever is around here, right, that will also get mixed down to omega IF. what is around phi f will also get mixed down to omega if, right? I mean, it is multiplication in the, let me say VIF of t is this. So it is multiplication in the time domain, and it becomes convolution in the frequency domain. So let's say this is our desired signal coming down from omega RF, and if there is anything around 3 FLO, 5 FLO, 7 FLO, that will also get mixed down to the same intermediate frequency. Okay, that is what we get from, I mean, that's what you will see if you do the convolution operation. Okay. Now, what is there at 3 FLO? What is there at 5 FLO? I mean, typically you don't know, but assuming that there is no signal, you'll basically have noise. Okay. So let me just use some color coding. So let me say there is uniform noise at all these frequencies in the RF band, right? Thermal noise. So what will happen is you'll have the noise from FLO, you'll have the noise from 3 FLO, you'll have the noise from 5 FLO, and so on. Now each of them, the conversion gain will be different because the amplitude of the spectrum is going to be different for each of the harmonics, right? If you write the Fourier expression, it will be somewhere like 4 by pi times the 4n by pi, something like, I mean 4 by n pi, that will be the 2 by n pi or 4 by n pi depending on how you take the Fourier expansion. So that's how it will be, right? So the conversion gain will be different because of the spectral component's amplitude, but nevertheless what is happening is the noise around each of the harmonics gets folded on top of the intermediate frequency. So this is what is called as noise folding. Okay, noise folding in mixers. Okay, especially when you use square wave signals, and typically for receivers which are I mean most of the modern transmitters and receivers, the LO signal is not a sinusoid. Typically it is a square wave signal because mostly you will be using, I mean the whole thing is achieved using switching, and switching is defined as a multiplication with the square wave, right? So you are going to basically get a square, I mean you are going to get this problem of noise folding. So that is something that you should be aware of. Okay, so the noise and whatever is there, whatever junk is there around each of the harmonics is going to get folded on top of your intermediate signal. Okay, and which is called as noise folding. Okay, now okay, maybe I'll kind of stop with this for today's class. Any doubts or any questions? Okay, all right. Okay, we'll go a little deeper into mixers and maybe some math, and maybe we'll go into the implementation in the next class. Okay, all right. Okay, thanks everyone. And yeah, there was a question, I think Aditya had mailed me regarding audit students. So for those who are auditing this course, you don't need to write any of the exams, but you will need to do the design project. I mean, whatever comes under that 40% thing, the project as well as the design exercises. Okay, so if you can do those things, you'll be given audit certificate. All right. So how many of you are auditing? I think it's around 2 students or so, right? Or how many are auditing? More than that. Okay, anyway, I'll check the list. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a nice day.